We needed the money more than you. My brother-in-law said it with a smile. The room laughed. Nobody cared that a six-figure loan had been taken out in my name. My hands shook as I reached into my bag. Then you won't mind what happens next. The laughter stopped the second the front door exploded open. Every head turned. For a moment, nobody moved. Not Derek. Not my sister. Not even my mother. 3 people stepped into the house wearing dark jackets with official badges clipped to their belts. The room that had been mocking me seconds earlier suddenly felt too small. Derek's smirk disappeared. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What is this? My mother asked, standing up so fast her chair scraped across the floor. One of the officers scanned the room. His eyes landed on Derek. Mr. Lawson? Derek swallowed. I noticed it because it was the first sign of fear he'd shown all night. Just minutes earlier, he'd admitted taking out a loan in my name as if it were some harmless family favor. And somehow I was the selfish one for refusing to accept it. My sister stepped closer to him. What's going on? She asked. Nobody answered immediately. Instead, another investigator opened a folder. Thick. Packed with documents. Far more documents than should have existed. My stomach tightened. I had come here thinking there was one fraudulent loan. One forged signature. One betrayal. But the look that passed between the investigators told a different story. A much bigger one. Then the second investigator held up his badge. And Derek's face went completely white. Nobody in the room spoke. The silence felt heavier than all the laughter that had come before it. The investigator looked directly at Derek. Mr. Lawson, we'd like to ask you a few questions regarding several financial accounts. Several. The word caught my attention immediately. I wasn't the only one. Derek blinked. Just once. But it was enough. Because until that moment, he'd acted like everything was under control. Like the loan in my name was nothing more than a family disagreement. My uncle folded his arms. My aunt stared at the floor. My sister kept looking between Derek and the investigators, waiting for someone to explain what was happening. Nobody did. The lead investigator placed a stack of documents on the dining room table. I caught glimpses of account numbers, bank logos, loan agreements, names. Lots of names. Far more than I expected. Derek, the investigator said calmly, when was the last time you accessed these accounts? Derek didn't answer right away. For the first time all evening, he looked nervous. I don't know what you're talking about. The investigator nodded as if he'd expected that response. Then he slid one document across the table. Derek's signature was on it. The room went still. And before anyone could react, my uncle suddenly spoke. Wait. Why are you asking about those accounts? The investigator slowly turned toward him. How do you know which accounts we're referring to? The color drained from my uncle's face. My uncle opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The investigators waited. They didn't rush him. They didn't need to. The silence was doing the work for them. I just meant, my uncle started. The accounts you're looking at. The lead investigator tilted his head. But we never mentioned any account numbers. A knot formed in my stomach. Because he was right. Nobody had. Yet somehow my uncle already knew exactly what they were discussing. My aunt looked at him, then at Derek, then back again. It was the first time I noticed genuine fear in her eyes. The investigator opened another folder. Mr. Lawson received funds from multiple loan disbursements over the last 3 years. The room immediately erupted. That's impossible. There has to be a mistake. 3 years. My mother looked completely lost. But the investigators kept going. Transfer records, bank statements, wire confirmations. Each document connected to another, and another, and another. The story Derek had been telling all evening, that he borrowed money once because his family was struggling, started falling apart. This wasn't one desperate decision. It was a pattern, a system. Then the investigator revealed something that made my chest tighten. My name wasn't the only name involved. 2 other relatives had unexplained accounts linked to their identities. One of them was elderly. The other had no idea the accounts even existed. I looked at Derek. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't defensive. He looked cornered. Then the investigator turned toward my sister, placed a document in front of her, and asked a question that changed the entire room. Can you explain why money from Rachel's loan was transferred into your account? My sister stared at the document. For a moment, she didn't touch it, didn't speak, didn't even look up. The entire room was waiting. Dana, my mother said quietly. My sister's hands began to shake. That was when I knew, not because of what was written on the page, because innocent people usually get angry. Dana looked terrified. I can explain, she whispered. Nobody interrupted. The investigators simply listened. Derek told me it was temporary. The room went silent. My stomach dropped. Temporary. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Tears filled her eyes. She admitted Derek had shown her money entering accounts that didn't belong to him. He always had a reason, a story, an excuse. The funds would be replaced. Nobody would get hurt. Everything would be fixed before anyone noticed. At least that was what he promised. Derek immediately cut in. That's not what happened. But his voice lacked confidence now. The lead investigator opened another folder, then another. Each one contained more records, more transfers, more signatures, more names. The evidence wasn't just pointing at Derek anymore. It was exposing years of hidden activity. My aunt suddenly stood up. What do you mean my name is on those papers? The investigator slid documents toward her. She stared at them. Her expression changed instantly. Confusion, then shock, then betrayal. Because the signature wasn't hers. Someone had copied it, just like mine. The room began turning against Derek. One person after another realized they weren't his supporters. They were his victims. Then the lead investigator pulled out a final file. Unlike the others, it was marked with a red tab. He opened it, looked directly at Derek, and said a sentence that made everyone freeze. Mr. Lawson, this investigation didn't start with Rachel. Nobody spoke after that. Not even Derek. The confidence he'd carried all evening was gone. The investigator opened the red-tabbed file and calmly explained that Derek had already been connected to several ongoing fraud complaints in different counties. My forged signature wasn't the beginning of the investigation. It was the mistake that exposed everything. For years, he'd moved money through accounts, forged documents, and convinced people to stay quiet whenever questions appeared. Some relatives had knowingly helped. Others had been manipulated. A few had no idea their names were being used at all. The reality hit the room one person at a time. My mother sat down and started crying. My aunt looked physically sick. My uncle couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The same people who had called me selfish only an hour earlier now understood what had actually happened. I hadn't betrayed the family. I had refused to protect a crime. Charges were filed. Several people cooperated with investigators. Others faced consequences for their involvement. It took months to untangle everything, but eventually the fraudulent loan was removed from my record and restitution orders were issued. The last time I saw Derek was in court. He never looked at me. For years, everyone expected me to carry the consequences of his choices. Instead, he finally carried them himself. And as I walked out of that courthouse, I realized something that none of them understood that night. The moment I pressed charges wasn't when the family broke. It was the moment the truth finally stopped hiding.